J-Tech Studios in Atlanta, Georgia. It's America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. And now, here are your hosts, Tom Bastek and Mike Jacobs.
Hello and welcome in. This is America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. It's the game show, guys. I'm Tom Bastek.
And I'm Mike Jacobs. Hello, Tom. Welcome. Sorry for sounding a little bit stuffy this week. My allergies are kicking me hard this week. I don't know what's going on.
As long as you're not under the weather, my brother.
No, it is all nasal stuffage. I am in good health and all is well on that front.
Well, you sound still normal to me, just a little nasally. I think you're going to be fine.
Well, that's good. Well, I'll just lean hard into the nerd role this week, and I'll sound extra nasally for you guys.
I love it. I love it. Well, we'll be talking about some great voice work this week. Our featured show is Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Yes, indeed, a classic from childhood. And like you say, the voice of Olmec. We'll talk more about him later, but D. Bradley Baker, a huge name in the voice acting world.
Yeah, man, that's who you go out there and strive to be like. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, go look up his IMDb. It's very impressive.
We have a little bit of housekeeping that we want to just touch on real quick, and then we'll get right into the news with Christian. Mike, do you have it there?
I do indeed. So our old pal Brian has written in to give us a little more information on a bunch of different things. Primarily, though, he did explain the reason for NBC having the peacock for the logo, and
that's good.
We were on the right track with the idea of it being color television, but apparently
nice.
NBC's parent company was RCA, and in 1953, RCA was the approved color provider by the FCC, as in they set the standard for the United States color broadcasting technology, as it were. And so because of that, RCA owned NBC, so they, used the peacock to represent that sort of breakthrough in color television. But it was, in fact, the corporate parent RCA, not NBC itself. So there you go.
Huh. Well, there it is. Excellent.
I think I said this slogan before, but I believe in 1953 they used a slogan, this is the year that color is here. And the only reason why I know that is because I've heard it referenced in old-time radio shows where, I mean, I guess by 53, that is the end of old-time radio, but they definitely mentioned the fact that color TV is taking over.
And now we don't even know what a black and white television is anymore.
Right? I mean, God, imagine, I don't know, it's weird to think, because even though color TV has existed my entire life, I remember having a little black and white television in my bedroom as a kid. I can't imagine having never seen black and white television.
You'd only see it in movies and in shows
right?
And stuff where they do flashbacks and things,
Exactly.
Or period pieces, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's probably true.
But yeah, I know. It's interesting. All right, Mike, so this week we have Legends of the Hidden Temple, and we have opinions on that coming. But first, we should probably figure out if we're going to stump the chump again.
Yeah, we gotta do news. I guess there's not a whole lot of news, but we got a lot to talk about still, so let's bring in Christian.
Light up your cigarette, crack open a beer, and put the kiddos to bed. From chaos around the world to carnage in your very own front yard, it's time for the news.
This is the news brought to you by BuzzerBlog.com. Well, one of our favorite new 24-hour channels is getting an upgrade. The 24-hour Bob Barker Price is Right channel on Pluto TV, which, as we discussed last week and probably several weeks before, premiered with 24 hours of classic Price is Right episodes, is now... I'll explain how this was working. So when the channel premiered, we had one 8-hour block of episodes that was being repeated 3 times a day. Now, Pluto has made an announcement that starting with the Christmas episodes that they showed this past weekend, we will be getting a new episode every hour for each of those 24 hours. So we're talking about well over 120 new episodes every week. and that is for the foreseeable future. So anybody who's a big fan of the classic Price is Right, which I didn't realize how much I loved the old school Price is Right before I watched this channel. Anyone who's a big fan of that is going to be really happy about those changes. And I'm starting to see a lot of the episodes being archived on YouTube as well, which I think is great because some of these episodes haven't been rerun in decades since their original airing. So anything that gets more game show content out there, I am more than happy about.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was such a limited rotation prior to this, so that's awesome to learn that it's such a huge expansion.
You know, I've been digging fence post holes, so I didn't even turn my television on in the last 3 weeks. So I really, I'm glad to know that when I do get to finally tuning in, I'm very excited to know there'll be new content for me there. All right, Christian, what else do you have for us?
Well, this isn't necessarily in the world of game shows, but on a personal note, this is something that's very important to me and may be important to fans of 90s snack foods as well. On Monday, Doritos 3Ds are back on store shelves.
No way.
Wow.
Yes. Now, this was like one of my favorites. I think it puts me in about 4th or 5th grade when I used to eat these all the time. And I'm sure that ages me considerably. But right, so anybody who doesn't remember, Doritos 3Ds were like these corn snacks, and they looked like Doritos, but like puffed with air. They were little sort of three-dimensional triangle spheroid sort of things, and they were covered in Dorito dust, and of course, because it's the year 2021 and kids love the spicy, there's going to be a spicy nacho variety available for the first time. But yeah, Doritos 3Ds, big part of my childhood, and they will be back.
You know, I just want to say that you could cover just about anything in Dorito dust, and I would eat it.
That is 100% true, and the thing is, Christian, I don't want you to take this personally. I'm not a Doritos 3D guy. I actually preferred regular Doritos. I feel like the puffing of them makes the outer shell too thin, and it doesn't have that satisfying hearty corn crunch that a standard Dorito has.
Well, Mike, you have a lot of other great personal qualities that I admire.
So here's a question for you guys. Is if you say I'm going to have nachos, you know, so we're talking like where you put stuff on top, melted cheese and salsa and things like that. Do you use Doritos? Do you not use Doritos?
No, I do not.
No, I don't use Doritos.
Right. And so, like, for me, that just would never even cross my mind. And then my wife tells me that she grew up, her grandfather used to take Doritos and make nachos out of them.
There's a similar thing that I've heard of. I can't remember if it's in my wife's family or not, but Dorito pie it's a similar thing. It's like a casserole.
Frito pie?
No, Frito pie is basically just chili in a bag of Fritos.
Yeah.
Dorito pie is more of like a casserole made with Doritos. I don't remember the exact makings of it, but it's a thing that has come up several times over the course of my life.
All right, so send in your Doritos recipes to the show. You can either get us on social or email us directly through the website.
Well, and I will say, though, Christian, I'm not on board with the Doritos 3D fandom. I do understand wanting to bring it up, because if they brought back Cheetos X's and O's, you better believe we'd be talking about it.
Oh, I remember those. Holy God. Hey, real quick, back on the subject of Frito pie and Dorito pie, I'm in Pennsylvania, and one of the convenience store chains around here has a thing called a walking taco. So what they do is, they take a bag of Doritos and they cut the top off it, and they just fill it with like cheese and meat and tomatoes and sour cream and mix it up. Oh my God, that is the ultimate drunk food.
I had one of those once, yeah.
Yeah, I forget where the first place I had that. I want to say it was New Orleans. Might have been the first place I had a walking taco, and I was like blown away.
Yeah, a work event I was at was catered, and they had those there. So it was obviously like very fancy versions of it, but they were awesome.
Culinary ingenuity.
Indeed.
I'm just waiting for you to ship down some of that Amish cheese, man.
Oh, man, whenever you want, I'll bring you some. We sell it at my place.
Oh, that's so great. I love it. All right, Christian, it's time for This Week in Game Show History. We're getting close to New Year's. Do you have a New Year's thing for us?
Yeah, well, this is going to be actually our last game show history of 2020. So we are going back to December 29th, 1969. Now, this is the premiere of a show, a really cool show that is not really talked about very much, especially among casual game show fans. Some of the more hardcore fans might remember it. This is a show called the Who, What, or Where game. Now, this was a show that was on NBC Daytime from 1969 to 1974, hosted by a man named Art James, who was a really great host, and he did a few shows around then. Pay Cards was a show that he did. He hosted a show called Catchphrase in the 80s. He was on Concentration as an announcer and a host. But this Who, What, or Where game was really his first successful show. Now, on the show, you had 3 contestants, and each of them were staked with $125 to start the game. Now, a category comes up, and for every category, there's a who question, a what question, and a where question. So the who question, the answer is a person. The what question, the answer is a thing, and where, the answer will be a place. And there are odds set for each question. So every player silently bids how much they want to wager on a particular question. And what the creator, Ron Greenberg, did was create a really unbelievably exciting trivia show with no buzzers, which around that time was sort of unheard of. Jeopardy was already really popular on NBC in the late 60s. So to have a show that was unbelievably exciting, and the excitement only came from the drama of giving right or wrong answers and the money going up and down, made the Who, What, or Where game really, really popular. And it created one of the first really powerful hours in game show programming, where you had Jeopardy, I think was on at 12 p.m., and then you had the Who, What, or Where game at 12:30. They were the perfect complement to each other, and a lot of people who had lunch around that time and watched game shows really got to admire these two shows. Unbelievable game. We had a home version that came out in the early 70s, one of the few that plays exactly the way the TV show does, down to the questions coming right from the series. And just a really, really cool show, the Who, What, or Where game. There is one episode out on YouTube. I would recommend checking it out. Really, really fun.
But if I can find it, I'm going to put it up on the website for this week's show. That's great.
Yeah.
I personally never heard of it, Mike.
No, not at all. That sounds really interesting, though. I definitely want to check that out.
Yeah, check it out. It's really cool. You know, the pilot episode was filmed in 1969, was actually filmed the same day as Tiny Tim's wedding on The Tonight Show.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I got to talk to Ron Greenberg years later about it. He said that the hallway smelled like flowers for days afterwards. And that's just one of the enduring memories of filming that first episode, was just the smell of fresh flowers throughout 30 Rock.
I have to say, I have become quite the Tiny Tim fan over the past maybe like 8 months or so. I happened across one of his records and picked it up for pretty cheap, and it's fascinating to listen to. The guy
Were you tiptoeing through the tulips?
I was tiptoeing through the tulips. It's that album. God Bless Tiny Tim is the name of the album. But I need to explore more and listen to more stuff, because it is bizarre, but also very like endearing. I don't know. I like it.
He was a fascinating guy, very intelligent too.
Absolutely.
He was a regular, I think, on the Howard Stern show for like the last few years of his life. If I'm
That
not
makes
mistaken.
sense.
Stern always had weird people on. That's great. All right, it's that time, Mike. We're ready to stump the chump.
It is, and actually, this would make a nice segue from the This Week in History, because also this past week, I suppose, in history, 1981, December 25th, was Chuck Woolery's end of his run hosting Wheel of Fortune, which is the show that we will be quizzing you about today.
Oh boy! All right, here we go.
Here's the deal. I'm going to amp this one up a bit, because last week I was like making it, I'm going to make it a little easy because he's not going to be able to get it. This week I'm saying I'm making it harder because I think you are going to be able to get it.
So was this a submission that we got?
This was a submission, yes, a fan submission. Very good question, but I think they're asking for 4 of something, and I think there's immediately an answer, and so I'm going to knock that one out. Basically, what we want is 4 people other than Vanna White who have acted as letter turners on Wheel of Fortune. But the kick-up that I'm going to do is say I'm also knocking Susan Stafford off of that list. I feel like that's too easy for you. Not counting Vanna White, not counting Susan Stafford, I need 4 people who have been a letter turner on Wheel of Fortune.
Okay. Now, I admire this Stump the Chump segment. I say this every week, and I'm going to say it again this week. I have diarrhea. But we're going to see what we can do. All right, so you want 4 people who have turned the letters on Wheel of Fortune, other than Vanna White, other than Susan Stafford.
Right. Now, hang on. Mike, do we have the gentleman or woman, lady, who gave us the question?
Yes, this is from Bob L. Bob L. has submitted us this question.
All right, so Bob
From
L.
Philadelphia,
Christian,
Pennsylvania.
From Philadelphia. All right, your brethren there. Okay,
Oh, cool. If I don't get this right, I'll go find them.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
All right.
Oh, jeez.
So we're talking about people who have turned the letters on Wheel of Fortune, and we're not talking about Vanna White, and we're not talking about Susan Stafford.
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Let's take these one at a time. Are there bonus points if I give more than 4? I don't know if I can.
I can only verify 5. No, you know what? I can verify 7. Sorry.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
All right. Well, let's see what we can do. Okay. First, let's talk about the 80s. So before Vanna White became the permanent hostess, you had some on-air tryouts. You had a woman named, I believe her name was Vicky McCarty. She was a Playboy model, and she had an on-air audition as the letter turner on Wheel of Fortune. In addition, you had a woman named Summer Bartholomew, who later became famous for being the prize model and sort of co-host on Sale of the Century, hosted by Jim Perry, also on NBC throughout the 80s. And in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken, I wonder if this is on your list, but Artie Johnson from Laugh-In did, I think, a week of shows turning the letters. I don't know if it was as a gag or what, but he did that. I believe it was for a week.
I confirmed.
Okay. And we'll go into the 90s. So I know that Pat Sajak's wife Leslie had a turn. I believe it was for one episode, at least one episode. Turning the letters, and we also had Pat Sajak. Actually, it made news a couple years ago. He did this interview where he talked about how there was one episode where he turned the letters because he was hungover or had laryngitis or something like that. Couldn't talk, didn't have the mental facilities to host the show, so he turned the letters on at least one episode. And then actually just last year, while Pat Sajak was recovering from surgery, Vanna White was hosting the show, and we had Minnie Mouse turning the letters. So I don't know. I've lost count how many that was.
Yeah, well, so I don't see anything about Pat himself.
Now, my question is wasn't there, and I'm just going to throw this out, didn't Pat Sajak's daughter turn letters at one point, too?
That is also correct, yes.
She did. Yep, she sure did. I think that was at the same time while he was recovering from surgery. I'm pretty sure.
I think so, because I remember Vanna introducing her as saying, well, we couldn't do the show without a Sajak, so here she is.
Right.
Yeah, so I think you were at 5 or 6 there.
Yeah.
I did and confirm the Vicky McCarty. I did not get that it was on air necessarily, but that makes sense because she was part of the finalists run with her and Summer Bartholomew. Summer Bartholomew also filled in for Susan Stafford back in the day. The only ones I have that you missed were a woman by the name of Katie Cantrell, who won a contest. She took Vanna White's place. I'm reading this directly from Wikipedia. Took White's place for second and third rounds of the episode that aired March 24th, 2011. And she was a student of the Savannah College of Art and Design, which is my alma mater.
Yay!
Awesome.
Yeah. And then finally, this obviously doesn't count, but along with Minnie Mouse, Mickey was there as well. But you have more than sufficiently answered the question, therefore proving you are not the chump. Sorry, Bob L. Not happening this week.
No way in L am I going to get that.
Oh, God. Sorry.
Bob, by the way, Christian lives in Amish country, so go find him.
He has no way of quick escape.
I sure don't. The next buggy comes in 3 hours.
Yeah, what did you get, like 4 feet of snow up there this past week?
No, we didn't get that much, actually. I think we got about 8 or 9 inches. But you know what? It rained a couple days ago. It's all gone now. You couldn't even tell anything happened out there.
All right. Well, if you'd like to be submit a question for Stump the Chump for Mr. Carrion, we'd be very happy to have it. Just drop us an email or hit us up on social, and we will ask Christian and try to stump him. And we have got to get them ordered, but we've got little pins on the way that are going to be coming in that if you stump the chump, you'll get a tell them what they've won pin sent to you. And if you don't, then Christian's just going to get a collection of all those pins.
I'm going to look like an Arby's manager.
Lots of pieces of flair, baby.
I'm a really quick personal note. I so greatly appreciate all the questions that are being sent in. This is one of my favorite parts of the show because I get to flex my brain for a minute, and it's just really fun remembering all this stuff that I learned about game shows way back when. So thank you to everybody who submitted a question, and thank you in advance to everybody who will submit a question. And I hope it's a lot of you because I can't wait to embarrass all of our listeners.
Oh my God. And so what you're basically saying is that we don't flex your brain at all. It's not until you get a question from us.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we gotta stump him just so he'll shut the hell up for a minute.
Yeah, I'd enjoy that very much. All right, this week we're doing Legends of the Hidden Temple.
What 90s kid didn't have fond memories of Legends of the Hidden Temple? I mean, you took this concept of a game that was larger than life and made for kids. Double Dare had done it, Funhouse had done it, but nobody had ever done it with such an interesting motif. Certainly nothing as interesting as Legends of the Hidden Temple. I mean, you had all this ancient Aztec and Mayan architecture. You had the Shrine of the Silver Monkey, which I think I can count on one hand the number of kids who were able to put that together successfully. Fun fact, that statue was, I don't know if it's still there, but for a long time it was in the lobby of the Viacom building in California. And it's an unbelievable piece of architecture, also impossible to put together.
I never really understood why it was so hard, but watching it, it apparently is very difficult.
I don't exactly know how either. I mean, when you're in front of cameras and under lights with a clock and temple guards chasing after you, it's probably hard to put anything together, let alone a three-piece silver monkey. But nevertheless, it was the scourge of many a Legends of the Hidden Temple contestant. But yeah, incredible show. And Kirk Fogg was a cool host as well. He was a contestant on Body Language, a charades-based show that we've talked about, I think, a couple times in the early 80s before he was famous. And never had a huge TV career after Legends of the Hidden Temple. But to be known for that one show is a pretty good hand to have, you know?
Christian, do you remember a show on Nickelodeon, like, way back in the day called Finders Keepers?
I do, with the big house, and you had to run around and find. Yeah, that was a really cool show too.
The Legends of the Hidden Temple feels a bit like a spiritual successor to that in a way. It's like a melding of that and like a Double Dare Funhouse kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like the layout of the temple was pretty similar to that big house as well. Finders Keepers was a really cool show. I don't know how well it's aged. That's one. Excuse me. I don't know how well it's aged. That's not one of those shows that is rerun as frequently. When they had Nick Games and Sports on like cable TV, they used to rerun it once in a while. But yeah, really cool show. But Legends of the Hidden Temple, I mean, I don't know how many kid shows have done that concept much better than that.
I mean, Olmec is a icon of every person our generation's childhood.
That would be a prop I would pay to see. I don't know where it is now or if it even exists, but I would love to see Olmec up close.
You know what? I'm going to find that out, and we will answer that later in the podcast.
Excellent.
All right, Christian, how about a plug for Buzzerblog?
Of course, BuzzerBlog.com, the #1 game show website in the world. Whether you're looking for information on new series, returning series, classic series, 24-hour reruns of old game shows that you never thought you wanted to see again, BuzzerBlog.com is the place to go. Whether you were an industry insider, a diehard game show fan, or just a bunch of nerds like me, Tom, and Mike, BuzzerBlog.com is the place to go. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christian. Have a happy new year.
Hey, you as well, guys. Happy 2021.
All right. I definitely feel bad for naming this Stump the Chump.
Well, clearly he's not a chump, but I mean, at this point, I don't even know how to judge what is going to be a hard question and what is not.
I was so concerned in the very beginning of this. We talk about this each and every week that we didn't want to make it too hard for him.
Right. I don't think that's possible.
And now I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe I am going to start to ask those kind of crazy questions like, give me the exact date that so-and-so premiered, bonehead. Man.
No, what I want is something like, what color socks was Bob Barker wearing on his first episode or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we were pretty... I mean, we weren't really specific in what we said we would or would not ask him, except we said we wouldn't go too crazy on the questions. But I have to tell you, we're not going crazy enough.
No, absolutely. The bar is being raised each and every week. So, I mean, clearly we got to just go all out on these and find something really hard. We've got a couple more submitted ones in the hopper.
Good.
One of them I don't know if I knew, but when I read the answer, I was like, oh, I think I knew that. So I think he's going to get that one. But I think we got one that might be, I don't know if it's going to stump. Obviously, at this point, I don't think anything's going to stump him. But maybe it's one that will give him pause and he'll have to think about before he remembers instead of just spouting out an hour-long answer immediately. We'll see.
I don't know. Well, the other thing is that we can always beef it up, too, like you did this week. I definitely feel like if we find that we think it's going to be too easy, let's just figure out a way to make it a little bit harder for them.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, for this next one we got on deck, I've got several little kicker questions I can add to see if we can make it a little bit more difficult for him.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. All right. Well, once again, if you'd like to submit, please just drop us a line via email on the website or via social, and we will get you in there for Stump the Chump. Right now, we're going to take a quick break, and we come back. Mike, we've got gameplay, Legends of the Hidden Temple. You ready?
Yeah, there's a lot of gameplay in this show.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Check it out. We'll be right back. You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. And there it is, the tribal rhythms of the beginning of Legends of the Hidden Temple.
The tribal rhythms, indeed. So before we dive into the gameplay, just in case there's anyone out there who's not familiar with the show, I do want to kind of explain the theme a little bit, just so you know what it is we're dealing with here. But basically, think of Double Dare, or like we mentioned in the news, either Finders Keepers, if you're familiar with that show, or Funhouse. Giant set, but it meets, say, Indiana Jones. There's a lot of sort of Mayan architecture and thematic elements, very jungle themed. But the sort of centerpiece of all of this is a giant talking stone head named Olmec, Olmec, and he sort of acts as the an omniscient guardian, if you will, of the temple, leading the contestants through this adventure into a temple to recover a lost artifact.
And I would really say he's a co-host. I mean, really,
Sure.
I mean, it may be a puppet type thing, but he's definitely, interacting with it's not like all of his stuff is pre-recorded. He's interacting with the contestants, saying whether they're wrong, right, whatever. He's definitely a co-host of the show.
Absolutely, without a doubt, a co-host. And yeah, he is indeed obviously Olmec is not a live thing, but the person playing his voice, as we mentioned earlier, D. Bradley Baker, he is there, like you say, interacts with the contestants and all that. So it's not a pre-recorded, just animatronic thing. It's a puppet. Like we said earlier, D. Bradley Baker is just a phenomenal talent in the voice acting world. If you go look him up, just basically every cartoon you could think of, he has had some voice. I'd say probably the biggest roles, he's had several voices in SpongeBob, primarily the character Bubble Bass, if you remember that episode. And he's Klaus, the talking fish on American Dad. But yeah, he's all over the place.
That one I know.
Yeah. And in fact, I actually share a credit with him. An old Cartoon Network movie, Ben 10 Race Against Time. It was the first live action made for TV Ben 10 movie. I worked on that, and he is a voice credit in there.
What exactly did you do for Ben 10 Race Against Time?
I did compositing. So at that time, I was more of a junior compositor. So I'm doing real, almost composite assist kind of stuff.
What does that entail? Explain that to the people who don't know what a compositor does.
So the basic way of explaining what a compositor is imagine you're watching Star Wars, right? And you've got the person standing on a stage, which is like half real, half special effects, right? And then you've got a 3D character, and then you've got like all these different special effects going on, right? So the compositor puts this all together, combines shadow and lighting and color correction effects and things like that, and blends it all together into one cohesive scene.
I see. So you make it look real.
Yes, exactly. So Composite Assist is doing the sort of grunt work of compositing so that the compositors can focus on the real art of it. So that includes things like what's called pulling keys, which is if you're on a green screen, getting rid of the green screen so that they can put the background in. What's known as rotoscoping. That we're getting into the lengths of it here, but rotoscoping was initially developed for the old Superman cartoons in the 60s. Disney did it a lot back then as well. So I guess to say it was created for that is not true. But Disney and Superman cartoons were both very well known for doing rotoscoping, which is drawing cartoons over actual footage of people. The most recent example of this would be the movie Waking Life. I don't know if you ever saw that.
No.
It's entirely rotoscoped. They shot the movie and then drew animation on top of the entire thing.
Okay, so it reminds me a lot of the look of it reminds me a lot of what they did with the last season, the very last show of Blacklist on ABC. I don't know if you saw that or not. Because of the pandemic, they couldn't finish shooting. And they used what looks like rotoscoped animation to make like a comic book kind of feel to that last episode for all the scenes that they didn't get a chance to film. And they had the actors actually voice it themselves from their houses.
Interesting.
It was a great way to finish out the last season of Blacklist while the pandemic had just begun and started. So, yes, I definitely know what that rotoscoping looks like. That's interesting.
Right. And so that sort of animation style is, I guess, the genesis of the term rotoscoping, but it's a technique that is used for many, 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 many different things, not just animation. So I did a lot of rotoscoping in my days at Turner.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for going down that rabbit hole with us. I appreciate it. Just sometimes people want to know what your background in television was. You mentioned it quite a bit, and that gives everybody a little bit more of an understanding. That's great.
Yeah. I think the easiest way to say it is just special effects, more or less. Post-production.
You were cool, man. You were so cool.
Well, when you watch the things that I worked on, maybe not so much, but it's fine.
Now you just do customer service.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I like this job more, which is weird.
Oh,
but...
I know you do, but I'm just saying that seems like so cool. And like when you tell me customer service, I'm like, yeah.
No, it's very, very, that is very true. What are you going to do though? You know.
Okay. So continue on.
All right, so the game begins. There are 6 teams of 2 kids each. So as far as starting, I think this game has the most contestants we've seen in any game show we've done so far.
They eliminate quickly, though.
They do eliminate very quickly.
I feel like there's some kids that are getting totally ripped off in this game, and we'll talk more about that when we get to the rating section, because if I was redoing this, I would do it a little differently, and we'll talk more about that down the road, but go ahead, please.
Sure. Yeah, so like I say, 6 teams, and people who are familiar with the show, I'm sure remember all the 6 team names, but they are the Purple Parrots, the Orange Iguanas, the Silver Snakes, the Blue Barracudas, the Green Monkeys, and the Red Jaguars. And basically, they all are starting by trying to reach the temple by crossing the moat. So the first round, each team has one of their kids on a raft or an inner tube, something like that, and they have to paddle themselves across this moat. It's maybe, I don't know, 12 feet across, 10 feet.
Imagine, you know what, for people who've never seen the show, imagine a Olympic-sized swimming pool, but they're not going the length of it, they're going the width of it.
Exactly. And apparently it's also very shallow.
When the kids fall in. Yeah, no, but when the kids fall in, sometimes they have to go back to the beginning.
Yes.
And it's like up to their waist. I mean, and these are kids, so
right.
11 to 14 years of age. You know, here it's not very deep at all.
Yep. So the first kid paddles across, and then when they reach the other end, the kid who's still left at the front pulls the raft back, hops on, and then goes across themselves. Once both contestants are on the other side, there's a little pedestal there, and they say hit the gong. It's very much not a gong. It's a button. So that's an odd choice, but it does make a gong sound. I'll give them that. So they hit the gong and lock in, and the first 4 teams to do so will move on to the next round, which means that, like you said, 2 teams, 4 kids immediately are just done. You don't even get to see their names. They just are out of the show within moments of being there. I don't know if they give them another chance on a later show or something like that, or if it's just, sorry, you're out of here. But it would be very disappointing if I was on one of those teams.
And this is something else that'll play into my ratings down the road. They give a lot of what I consider to be nonsensical product placement parting gifts in this. Now, you know I am a giant fan of parting gifts, and I wish that we would see more of that in more game shows nowadays. And I do believe that it's a great way to do sponsorship. You know, you get Nestle to sponsor, and everybody gets chocolate milk to go home. You know, and that's fine. But I watched some of the parting gift sponsorships, and if you pull this up online and watch any of the episodes of Legends of the Hidden Temple, you will see that some of these gifts are pretty awful, like that they're giving away in these first couple rounds. Now, obviously, the further the teams make it, the better the gifts get. But these are not the best parting gifts in the world. And it was literally done, you could see, just to take money from the sponsors as they went. And to me, I felt a little ripped off, but go ahead.
That's fair. I mean, they got to make their money, I guess.
They do. But you know what? The provided of the action and the excitement is what we're paying for, and we weren't the ones losing and getting those prizes. So I don't know why I should be bent out of shape about it, but please go ahead.
They deserved better. Anyways,
yes.
so yes, the first 4 teams to make it across the moat move on to round 2, known as the Steps of Knowledge. So these 8 kids will stand atop a staircase, and Olmec regales them with the story of this episode's legendary artifact. He gives a quick little tale about, usually maybe the item itself is not something that's real, but it's at least a somewhat historically accurate story, and he's giving factual information about things that really happened, or at least that happened in some sort of folklore somewhere in the world. You know, it's not just a totally made up fictionalized story. After he goes over the legend, he explains what the artifact is that is missing and where in the temple it currently resides. We'll get more to that later. But then he asks them a series of multiple choice questions about what he's just told them, as a sort of trivia test of memory sort of thing. So he reads, like I say, multiple choice questions, and then the contestants, there's a tile on the floor in front of them, and they have to stomp on it to buzz in and try to answer the question. If they get a question correct, they move 1 step down the staircase closer to the bottom. If they don't, there's no real penalty, but they do give the other teams a chance to buzz in and get it right. Obviously, since it's multiple choice, once you're at the last question, they don't give anyone the gimme, they just move on. After any team gets 3 correct answers, they've made it to the bottom of the staircase and is considered, safe, locked in, whatever, and we'll be moving on to the next round. And once 2 teams reach the bottom, that round is over, and we have our winners who move on to the next round. So again, we're eliminating, 2 more teams here, 4 more kids. So, I guess at least you get to do 2 things, but there's episodes. What's that?
Go ahead.
I was going to say there's episodes where they don't even ring in at all during the episode and don't move any steps down, so it's like not much different than getting out in the first round.
My feeling is still, at this point, you still haven't met any of the kids either.
Right. Yes, that is correct.
And it's just, that's again interesting to me, but please continue.
Yeah, so after we get down to the final 2 teams, this is when you meet the kids, you learn their names, you talk about what they're interested in and whatnot, and you move on to the Temple Games, which to me is probably the most difficult part of this game. None of these look easy, or to be honest with you, even really very fun. Like, they look so difficult to the point where it's like, I don't want to do this. But they're like physical challenges, kind of like you would see in Double Dare. And they're usually themed around the legend for the show. So something to do with whatever the artifact is or the legend that Olmec told earlier. Ultimately, there's going to be 3 of these games, and over the course of them, you're earning either pieces or entire pendants of life, which will come in handy in the 4th round. The first 2 of the games in the Temple Games were one-on-one, with 1 person from each team playing against each other, and the game itself being worth half of one of these pendants. And then the 3rd game is, all 4 contestants, a 2 versus 2 game, and is worth a full pendant. And whoever at the end of these 3 games has earned the most pendants will be the sort of winner and moves on to the final round of the Temple Run. So, in regards to what you're saying about meeting the contestants, at this point, I think I would be okay with being eliminated because you've at least, made it onto the show, So the final round, the Temple Run. In this round, the contestant is shown the entirety of the temple, which is 12 rooms in total. And each room has a certain task that must be done in order to move on. Most of the time, that's a locked door they have to find a key for, something like that. But some of the rooms are just, difficult to get through or something like that, And a couple rooms have a couple different exits, so there's different ways that you can go throughout the temple and try and find your way around. The deal is, though, if 3 of these rooms have temple guards in them, and that's where these pendants of life come in handy. If during the run a contestant encounters one of these temple guards, basically, if they don't have a pendant of life, they're thrown out. They're done playing. But if you have a pendant of life, you can exchange it. You can give it to the temple guard, I guess, and they won't capture you. And I keep saying capture and throw you out like it's some sort of real threat. Obviously, these are all representational. It's a game.
Right.
But yeah, so you give them your token and you can keep playing. And if the second contestant only has a half pendant, for example, if you won one of the first 2 games in the temple games and then the last game, you have a pendant and a half total. So the second contestant can theoretically find the second half of their pendant somewhere in the temple. And if they do, then they have a full pendant to trade. A half pendant is not enough to get rid of a temple guard. So yeah, the first contestant just goes until they are captured. Once they are captured, the second contestant then goes. And ultimately, the whole goal here is they have to find the item, the artifact that Olmec described earlier in his legend, and then make it out of the temple within 3 minutes. There is a little... I guess bonus given in that once you get the artifact, all the guards are gone, all the rooms are unlocked. So at that point, it's just like get out as fast as you can. You don't have to worry about, still escaping the guards, doing all the tasks. Really, the main goal is get the artifact. Once you do that, it's fairly simple to get out. That being said, people fail this all the time.
Dude, this is not an easy thing. I mean,
it is not, and it watching it is one thing, but being in that actual temple and doing those things has got to just be way more difficult than it looks. And also, you're exhausted by the end of doing the entire show. I don't think there's any show that I want to more talk to someone who was a contestant on than this one, because I want to hear their side of it, because like I say, when you watch it, it's like, oh my god, this is so easy. And like half the time they don't even look like they're trying. They're just like casually strolling through the temple.
Yeah, I just wonder like how extremely wiped out you are by the end of the day, because from what I've read, they filmed like five episodes in a day, and what they do is they'd film all the sections at a time. So you would have like all of the moat crossings first, then all the steps second, then all the challenges third, and then they would do all the legend run-throughs, like the temple run-throughs. So, to me, by the time you get to the temple, you've been there for how many hours? Who knows? And you've got to be exhausted.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess you get time in between to rest while the other, temple games are going on.
Yeah, I don't care if you're 12 years of age. You've been there for 10 hours, resting or not, you're still wiped.
100%. And that's the thing, is those temple games are so difficult. Like, okay, one of the ones I watched was they were on a slippery floor with like soap suds on it, and then a bungee cord had them tied to like a totem pole in the middle, and then there were totem poles in each corner, and they had to grab little eyeballs out of this basket in the middle and then get over to the totem pole and stick them on. And the kids were not even making it halfway across, because the bungee cords were apparently strong enough to hold, I would say, full-grown adults back. And then being on slippery floors, they're just slipping and sliding around. And I mean, these games are so difficult.
Yeah, it's funny because I was only at the ass end of this in terms of like catching this show, because I was older, so to me, I was like in high school by the time this came out. And gosh, I may have been even above that. I may have been just out of high school, but But the point was, I only saw a couple episodes of this as a kid, and to me, I thought it was cool, and it would be something I want to do. Now, as an adult, I look at this, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure I want to do this.
Yeah, I totally agree. Looking at it through the eyes of an adult, I realized how difficult it is and like how not fun it has to be on the show, but how much fun it was to watch as a kid.
Yeah, but I mean, the other thing is I look at, what is it, Floor is Fire?
Oh, The Floor is Lava on Netflix?
Floor is Lava, thank you. I look at Floor is Lava, and that looks fun, and I'm an adult, and I'm like, I kind of would do that.
I would absolutely do that one.
So, I mean, like, you could say that I'm looking at it and saying I wouldn't do it as an adult. I think what it is I look at being extremely tired, having only 3 minutes to do it, working in light and weird lighting situations with fog and everything else they've got going on there. It doesn't sound like they're setting people up for success.
That is absolutely true. I think if I would like to do the temple run, but I'm not interested in playing the game up to the point of getting to the temple run.
Exactly right.
Just give me two tokens and put me in the temple run, and I'll see if I can get the object.
The nice thing is that Kirk Fogg did a good job of trying to help the kids. A lot of the ways that you're taking maybe taking a page out of Mark Summers' book with Double Dare or not, but to try to help the kids along, like turn the wheel to the left, that sort of thing.
Right. But I also have to imagine that wasn't terribly helpful either, because there's so much going on. Whenever he does that, they almost never react. And I don't think they can even hear him, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, I mean, that's entirely possible. The other thing is that Olmec gives you before they run through the temple, a full breakdown of what you can do in the temple.
Right.
And because there's so many different ways that you can leave so many different rooms, it's like you can do this or go this way, or maybe you'll go this way and
the
then
choices
do this or go
are
that
yours
way.
and yours alone.
And I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm so confused after listening to him spout off all that crap. I have no idea where I'm going now.
Well, and the other thing is I am terrible at spatial relations and mental mapping and all that kind of stuff. So you're looking at the temple from front on cross section, and then all of a sudden you're entering it from the side. So the angle that you're seeing it at is 100% different than the way you just learned it. We mentioned this a little bit in Carmen Sandiego with the map being upside down. It's got to be that same sort of disorientation.
Now I'm really good with spatial relations, and I have a great sense of direction. I still think that I would be okay with getting to once I got to the actual whatever the artifact is, I would be okay on tracing my steps back and getting out of there. But if I had to find a different way out, or I had to remember what the house looked like to begin with and then go, you do really well at concentration. I am not good about remembering stuff like that. I can remember I ran down this hallway, I went left, I went right, I went left, I went right. I can remember all of those. Gotcha. And I can back trace out of there. But if you tell me, take a look at this house, memorize all these rooms, and now go from a different direction, I'm screwed.
Yeah, see, I'm the exact opposite.
We would be good together.
I think that's true. That's true. Except neither of us are physically fit enough to participate in this show.
This is also extremely true as well. All right, so is that it on gameplay there, Mike?
That's it. If you get out of the temple, you win a trip to space camp, many other fantastic prizes, a Sing-a-Lodian karaoke machine. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody win, but I'm sure it happens.
Yeah, that's so funny. Well, anyway, it's definitely a lot of fun, and it's something as a child. If you were a child in that generation, you wanted to be on that show. I mean, you really did.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about this more in the ratings too, and we've talked about this in the past. I was a child of the generation for this show, and I will admit I did want to be on this show, but I didn't really watch it that much, to be honest with you. Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about that. We'll also talk about the history of the show. Not that there's all that much.
No, there's not. It's pretty quick, but that's fine.
Right. But we'll hit that and the ratings all coming up next. You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won. welcome back. Episode number 29, segment number 3. Mike, next week we do 30.
Number 30, and on the new year, too. That's a serendipitous occasion.
I think it is. It's going to be great. You know, we're only a couple of months away from having done this whole podcast for a year.
Oh, my God, you're right. I didn't even think about that.
But yeah, April, the end of April was the beginning of May we started. So it's not many months away. I have to tell you, this podcast has single-handedly gotten me through the pandemic.
I absolutely agree.
I feel like we are still performing and we are still getting our creative chops wet every week. You know, it's just great.
Indeed. I don't know that I would have said our chops are wet, but I agree with the sentiment.
All right. Well, my chops are wet right now for the history for the history of Legends of the Hidden Temple, please.
Yeah, so a little prehistory here. We talked about this a bit off air, and I didn't look into this yet, but I'm going to maybe try and do some more. Maybe we can bring this up in a future corrections department. Apparently, this was initially developed as a show called Secrets of the Haunted House. And the idea, it was basically the same show, but it had monsters instead of temple guards, and it was all, haunted house themed. The interesting thing is, you had mentioned that apparently there was later in like the late 90s the same show, that same name show with a Tales from the Crypt Keeper tie-in. Is that right?
Yeah, it was Secrets of the Crypt Keeper's Haunted House.
Interesting. So what I think maybe happened is that Nickelodeon was like, well, maybe this whole monster haunted house thing is a little too dark for kids, so let's revamp it. And then someone else took that original idea and made a more adult Tales from the Crypty sort of show out of it. It seems like they have similar seeds.
It was still a children's show on CBS.
Oh, it was?
It
Okay.
was. Now, and what I will tell you is that, I don't know if you remember the Crypt Keeper. I mean, I do, because that's
absolutely.
right in my heyday. But the Crypt Keeper went from being this creepy, scary guy on the HBO show to then becoming more of like a phenomenon, and was like in commercials and hosting things, and it became much more of a pop icon. So considerably less scary for children than the Tales from the Crypt show typically was, which was not really meant for children. Of course, we all watched it and got the crap scared out of us as kids. But by '96, when that came out, the Crypt Keeper really isn't as scary anymore.
You've been sort of watered down, which is true. And it's so interesting to me when things like that happen. One that immediately comes to mind is RoboCop. Like, the first RoboCop is the most not for kids movie ever.
Oh, it's violent as hell.
And then, people are doing cocaine and, getting hookers, and like, it's a serious, intense movie. But then all of a sudden, it's like there's a cartoon of it, and he's this children's superstar, and it's like, what a weird twist to happen.
I think you find back in those days, and I think it's still true to an extent nowadays. You find a property that sells, and you exploit it however you can to make more money off of it.
I agree. Yeah,
capitalism at its finest, my brother.
At its peak. All right, so anyways, they revamped Secrets of the Haunted House, made it Legends of the Hidden Temple, and it premiered on September 11th, never forget, 1993. Now, initially, and I was looking at the scheduling of this show, and I love the difference in scheduling times for kids game shows versus typical game shows. It's always, typical game shows do very well either like prime time or 11:30 or something like that. This one started out weekends at 6:30, which it makes perfect sense because kids on the weekends, they don't have school, they're up at 6:30, they're that's probably right before dinner time. Ended up being a phenomenal success. It raised their Nielsen ratings 0.5. I have no idea what that means, but apparently it was really good. So they decided as of February 14th, 94, they started airing it every weeknight at 5:30, which again is a perfect time for kids right after school. They get home, they do their homework, and now it's time for Legends of the Hidden Temple, which is absolutely my story as a kid. And so 40 episodes in the first season, which it's a lot when you say it, but you had mentioned off air that Price is Right was doing like 100 episodes per season or something.
Like
in the game
that,
show
yeah.
world, it's not that big. But nowadays, where we're used to 13 shows in a season, something
Right.
like that.
Right.
40 sounds like a whole heck of a lot. But then they brought on a second season of 40 episodes in June of 94. And then almost a full year, or almost exactly a year later, season 3 kicks off in June of 95 with another 40 episodes. 120 episodes overall in that span of 93 to 95, which feels very impressive to me. And there was actually a 4th season planned and even began production. I didn't get too much information about how far along they got into that production, but apparently the Nick execs were already sort of eyeing some new shows to bring in. And I kind of remember this being a thing in Nickelodeon, that shows were just it was like a revolving door, just coming in and out. And like so many shows that I remembered absolutely loving on Nickelodeon were 2 seasons, 3 seasons at most. Like Pete and Pete, Salute Your Shorts, all these, like, to me, iconic shows of the time were not lasting very long.
Yeah, but it was the same thing at MTV, though. If I recall correctly, when we were talking about Remote Control, like that show went out and it still had great ratings when it went out. And the reason is because the MTV was like, no, we need to change things up. We need to be hip. We need to be more on top. We can't be sticking to our guns.
Sure,
or
yeah, you can't
whatever,
get complacent. Yeah,
yeah, and so I think that was just very popular in the 90s, of just like dump and reset.
Yeah, which honestly I don't hate, because I would much rather have things do like a quick blaze of glory than slowly die out over years and become like The Simpsons, where it's now like a parody of itself almost, and like loses its luster.
That's another discussion for another day.
It is.
When did The Simpsons actually jump the shark? You know what I'm saying?
Man, yeah, I'd have to do some research onto that.
Me too.
Anyway, so yeah, as happens, things turned over and they pulled the plug on the 4th season before it could be finished. None of it aired. Like I said, I don't even know how much of it they made, so there may be unaired episodes,
right.
Or it may have been that they didn't even finish building the set. I don't know. But it never came out. So officially ended on November 24th, 1995. But it continued in reruns for another 4 years until 99, and then Nickelodeon Games and Sports, the separate channel, started, and they reran until 2007. And at that point, actually, the channel itself ended. It wasn't that they stopped showing the show, it's that they stopped making the network altogether, which is, to me, a very, very impressive run for only 120 episodes. And even since then, it's been on Teen Nick and can currently be seen on 2 different Pluto channels. So despite there not being a whole lot of episodes, it's almost like it's never stopped airing.
Yeah, it's so funny too, because Nickelodeon was really coming into its own as I was growing up, and then I'm 7 years ahead of you, and obviously you grew up in the heyday of Nickelodeon, and it still goes on to this day. But I had no idea how many other networks they went through.
Yeah, and that all happened sort of after my run as well. So I remember initially Nickelodeon was Pinwheel.
Right.
And I have very, very, very hazy memories of that, and their flagship show also called Pinwheel.
Mm-hmm.
And there was Today's Special, like very vague things, and I remember it coming into more form as its own network as Nickelodeon, but I didn't really have the attachment to it that I had until it was like firmly late 80s, early 90s Nickelodeon, and like you say, that's when it was really coming into its own. And at that point, the idea of multiple channels for one, cable network didn't really exist. There wasn't an MTV2. That idea of sequels to movie or to TV channels didn't really exist yet.
Right.
And so all these side channels of Games and Sports and Teen Nick and all that stuff, there was the Splat for a while. I don't know if that still exists, but that was all sort of after when I was super into what Nickelodeon was. So like you, I didn't really realize the expanse. I knew of Games and Sports because it reran old shows, and I was hoping it would rerun like all old shows, not just game shows, but unfortunately I did not get that wish.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, what else for history?
Well, in 2016, Nickelodeon brought it back, though this time as a made-for-TV movie. And to be perfectly honest with you, I've not seen this. I don't really know anything about it. I'm not necessarily chomping at the bit to see it, but I'm not like mad at the concept. When you read through the plot and think about how the idea of getting to this temple, learning about an object, exploring to find it, having to escape, that is absolutely a movie plot. And I don't doubt that there is a fairly decent, if the movie itself is not a decent script, I bet there's a decent script in there somewhere. So I don't hate the idea of them making a movie out of it.
I guess I do, only because you're clearly, okay, you haven't aired any reruns since 2007. So it's been 9 years. And the people who were really watching it back in those days, Mike, how old were you in 2016?
2016, I was 34.
So when you were 34, did you have any desire to see a movie that was made for TV on Nickelodeon that was based on the game show that you loved from your youth?
Well, so as I said before, I was not a huge watcher of this show. I have a weird relationship. I was a fan of it. I liked it, but I didn't actually watch it that often. To your point, though, this never even hit my radar. I don't think I knew it existed until we started doing research for this show. So no.
You're obviously making that for people who have kids nowadays, because theoretically at 34, you could have a 17-year-old kid, you could have a 14-year-old kid, you could have a 10-year-old kid. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean,
yes.
You may have kids currently that are watching Nickelodeon if you had children, and I certainly could too. And then you would see that and go, oh, wow, we should watch this. And so maybe that's why you bring it out. I fault them for waiting that long to bring that movie out and to do it as poorly promoted as it was.
Well, and I think it was, I mean, we've seen so much of this over the past probably maybe 5 to 10 years of these nostalgia reboots. So obviously they're just riding that wave. Mm-hmm. I don't think necessarily we would be the best judges of this simply because we don't have kids of that age. I don't know,
Right.
I could see a kid seeing a trailer for that and just being interested in it as an interesting movie, having no idea what the original property is. And then, like you said, the parent being like, oh, we should watch this because it's this thing I used to like. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I'm not the market for it, and I hate trying to weigh in on things that I'm not the market for.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't want to crap on it because I don't know enough about it, but I don't want to sing its praises either. All I can say is that I get it. I understand how there is a movie there. I can't say how it was executed, but it's not the worst idea in the world to me. But I don't think they did enough of. I think the promotion ultimately is what hit it because, I don't know, it seems like it could have been something, but it wasn't.
Well, here's the other little side note I'll throw here, end note, I should say. In March of this year, Quibi put on a casting call looking for adult contestants to compete in a supersized reimagined version of The Legends of the Hidden Temple. Now, obviously, that whole network was ill-conceived and is now gone, so I would assume that would mean that the revival will never see the light of day, but that I see as being more viable than doing the movie 4 years ago.
Yeah, well, and you brought up Flora's Lava. I could absolutely see an adult, or maybe even like kids and adult team up version, like Family Double Dare was some version of that.
Sure.
I have to say, if it's been this long and all that's happened is a quick nostalgia reboot movie, I don't hold out much hope that there's going to be anything more for this show other than, remember it for what it was kind of thing. I will say there's one user review on IMDb for the movie, and I think the title sums up exactly what I would have expected a review for this to be, which is, it's great for a Nickelodeon TV movie based on a game show. What are you working with, right? I'm sure they did as fine a job as they could have.
Yeah. Well, and so with that, it's now time for us to give our ratings for Legends of the Hidden Temple. So
yeah, what are we going to do this on? Out of Olmecs? Out of Legends? Out of
medallions.
Artifacts?
Medallions. Right? You get a medallion, right? Isn't that what they...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the what is that they're actually called? Hang on. Pendant of Life.
Okay, so we should do it out of pendants of life then.
Yes, I agree.
All right, so how many pendants of life do you give this one, Michael?
My answer is very complex here. We have mentioned how when I was a kid, this and Power Rangers were the first two shows where I remember specifically thinking I might be too old for this. But I was also 11 when the first episode of Legends of the Hidden Temple aired. So I was smack dab in the middle of their demographic. I can't explain why this show didn't latch on for me. I love everything about it in theory. Olmec is still super cool to me to this day. That's one of the coolest set pieces. We talked about in the news about trying to figure out where the Olmec is. I could not find anything about it. It's especially doubly difficult because there was actually an ancient civilization known as the Olmecs.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, there's a lot of information on what happened to them, but not so much the giant puppet statue from the TV show. So I don't have that information, unfortunately, but I'll keep looking. We'll see what we can find.
Yeah,
Maybe someone out there knows.
Yeah, or we'll have to send Christian down that rabbit hole at some point too.
Yeah. So wrapping up, I have fond memories of the show, but not of necessarily watching the show. I am just so blasé about the movie. I don't care. But there's no denying its production value is through the roof. The gameplay, that being a thing I like, that's all this show is. Obviously there's a lot of show to it, but the gameplay is great. 3.5, I guess. Everything about it is, from a technical standpoint and on paper, is great, but it just doesn't do it for me, and I can't explain why. And I think it's just because I was a pompous dork kid.
All right, that's great. Pompous dork kids are what we both were, and I will say that I was 7 years older than your pompous dope kid, but was in 11 years of age when this was out. I was 18 at the time, so I really caught the very, very tail end of this. Saw a couple episodes here and there, thought it was cool, thought, wow, that's something I'd love to do, just the same way that I thought that Double Dare was something I'd love to do. Now, I grew up a little bit more with Double Dare than this. So this to me kind of seemed a little Double Dare-ish ripoff, or a little Funhouse's rip-off-ish, I guess, of Funhouse. The host was average to partly cloudy. I think the voiceover guy for Olmec was great.
I love the term average to partly cloudy to describe Kirk Fogg. That is, yeah, he's the most vanilla ice cream shake I've ever seen.
So,
he just is. It could be anybody.
But
no offense to him, but it could be anybody.
But as you have clearly said, is that he was supposed to be, because Olmec was supposed to be
Olmec is the focus.
Olmec is the focus there. So I think it's cool. I think it was cool. I think it would have been really cool if I was 10 years younger. I think I would have been totally enamored and in love with this show. But I look back on it now and I say, great ideas. I think that they did well with this. I would like to see them get to the meeting of the kids. I would like to see the kids last a little longer. If I was doing the show again, I wouldn't start with 6 pairs. I would start with 3 pairs or 4 pairs and make sure you got to talk to every kid and give them all some time, some film time, and find out more about them. I think that would be better, and weed them out, maybe lose one group each time, that sort of thing, to get it down to the final. I think that it's definitely cool. I'm sorry to hear when I read something along the lines that 15% of all the contestants cried when they were scared by the people running around as the guards and the
temple guards. Yeah,
I that kind of bums me out a little bit. But at the same time, I kind of want to tell the kids, like, get your crap together, kid. You're gonna get a lot more scared in the future.
That's true.
I doubt the kids of today's day and age would be as scared as these kids were back in those days and age, because we were a lot more innocent in those days.
Well, and it's funny, I never thought about this, but it's almost kind of surprising that none of those temple guards got hit.
Yeah.
Fight or flight response. I'm sure one of those kids took a swing at one of them.
Yeah. Well, maybe we just never saw that part. But that being said, only going with a 3 on this, can't go any higher than it. Really wanted to go a little bit lower, but because you're right, the production value is great, and I do love the show, and I love the fact that it was a huge soundstage that they built this thing on. really getting a 3 pendants of life from me.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Mike. Well, that's all we've got time for today.
Yes, indeed it is. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Buzzer Blog people. Thank you, Stump the Chumpers. Thank you, everybody. We love you all.
Stump the Chumpers. I love that. Tune in again next time. We'll bring you the latest and greatest in the world of game shows, as well as a brand new featured show, too.
And don't forget, you can always find us on social, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the regulars. And, of course, tellthemwhatthey've.com.
Please subscribe, share, like, and drop a review if you like what you heard.
And if you didn't, I hope you fall into the moat and you're eliminated immediately.
Wow. We didn't even get to meet you, Mike.
I don't care. Get out of here. You lose.
See you next week.
Bye.
You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won, a JTech audio production, copyright 2020. No part of this podcast may be reproduced by anyone without the express written consent of the creators. For more information or to contact us, please go to tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com.
All right, Tom, what'd you learn this week?
So, Mike, I really am starting to get the feeling like I really think I was born about 10 years too early because, like, I missed out on a lot. I mean, I only caught the ass end of Legends, like we talked about. I missed Voltron, Power Rangers. I missed out entirely on Pokemon. Like, there was a lot of things that I really missed out on. I'm glad I'm a child at heart, so I get to still enjoy them, you know?
Yeah, I hear that. Although I'm sure you had plenty of awesome things from your childhood as well.
You make it sound like it was the 1940s and I had like I had a stick with a hoop.
70s. Well, I mean, hey, don't diss the stick with the hoop. That's fun.
Right. All right, what did you learn?
I learned that when I was a kid, I was way too harsh on these contestants. Because I remember sitting there watching people trying to do the Shrine of the Silver Monkey and be like, you idiot, like put the head on the right way. You haven't heard the sound of the gong yet that the door's been unlocked. Like, it did not seem difficult to me at all, and I didn't understand why all these kids were so bad at it. But now I get it, and I would like to offer a blanket apology to all of them.
I hope they forgive you. Copyright 2020, a JTech audio production.